is a live mic.
Oh,
Cameraman, are we ready to go? We ready to go?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome. Sorry for the slight delay in our start. I'm going to a couple of things just slightly different from our agenda. I'd like to put this to a vote for the board to alter our agenda just a bit so we can do election of officers first, because I think it's important that we have chairman or chairperson of the board before we get started. But I need a motion.
David Burrows, I move to change the agenda to have election of officers take place first.
Thank you, David.
it's Dave Walsh, second.
All in favor? All in favor. Thank you. Any discussion? I guess we should have done the discussion before we voted, but we're all set. Okay, so we need a chairperson. Are there any motions?
I move to elect James Hager, chairperson.
Is there a second?
Dave Walsh, second.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any discussion?
Well, I guess the question is, Mr. Hager open to the nomination?
Thank you. I'd proudly serve. Thank you. I accept.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor? Opposed? One abstention. 5-1.
Just a point of order. If you would please state who abstained.
Mr. Hager abstained.
Thank you.
As the new chair, would you like to come and take the chair seat, please? We do. And just to let you know, I skipped a little bit because we didn't take attendance, and we also have a new board member we should probably introduce, so I'll pass that off to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your vote and your confidence. I appreciate it. We're ready to open the meeting officially. We have not taken attendance.
We have not yet taken attendance.
Call the roll.
Mr. Frank. Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mr. Delaney.
Here.
And Ms. Nichols.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, in my previous time serving different boards, please silence your cell phone. I'm not telling you to shut it off, but please silence it so we don't hear random ringing. Thank you. First item on our agenda this evening is approval of the March 4th, 2024 Planning Board minutes. I hope you all have had a chance to read them in your packet. Motion, please.
Bill Benson, I'll make a motion to approve the March 4th, 2024 Planning Board minutes as written.
David Burrows, I second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Any edits, Mr. Burrows, as
Yes,
secretary?
I found, I have a question. I don't know if it's a correction, but it's under item 2 on page 4, the very last phrase. And just to refresh everybody, this is about the Gen X Capital Partners luxury motor toys proposal. The last line was the units would be sprinkled or sprinklered. It says sprinkled. And fire and water lines proposed. Visual renderings were updated to reflect changes in balcony design for stormwater control. I'm not sure if it's balcony design for stormwater control or if that was a misstatement. And I'm asking other members of the board how they remember that.
It was certainly not for stormwater. I believe, but we may have to check whether that was for fire sprinkler water.
That was my only comment for the minutes. But I'm not the only one who read them. Hopefully anybody else might have caught something different than that.
Anyone? I personally had no edits. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? All those in favor of the minutes as presented? We have 6 yeas.
I'm going to abstain since I was not part of
Ms.
the
Nichols will abstain.
planning board at that point.
Thank you. Moving along, Chairman's report. I have no report. I was just elected. Thank you. Committee reports. We have not met, and we will have a shuffling of members based on the election and new members joining us, so we will have something to report perhaps April if we have a chance to meet in a workshop before then. Moving along, administrative review report. Mr. Poirier or Ms. Ironman?
We do not have anything additional since the last meeting.
Thank you. We did change the order of election, and we have not elected a vice president or a secretary, so I think that's appropriate that we move to that or revisit that. I'd entertain a motion for a vice president, please, or vice chairperson.
This is David Burrows. I move to elect Bill Benson as vice chair of the planning board.
Dave Walsh, second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. Any discussion? Thank you, Colonel. And the next motion is for electing a secretary.
It's Dave Walsh. I move to nominate David Burrows as Secretary of Planning Board.
Bill Benson, I second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any discussion? One abstention?
One abstain.
One abstention.
Abstention.
Thank you. Elections are out of the way now. Now we are moving to our agenda for this evening. We have 7 items on the agenda that is listed. Item 5 has been tabled, so there are really only 6 items on the agenda. But in any event, item 1. Item 1 is a public hearing of a zoning map amendment, district changes. Proposed amendment to the zoning map to change map 8, lot 10 from the urban residential expansion district to the South Gorham Crossroads district. Item 2 is a public hearing, land use and development code amendment, home occupation standards. Proposed amendment to the land use and development code that would create a village home occupation overlay district and amend home occupation standards. Item number 3 is a public hearing, land use and development code amendment, sewer impact fees. Proposed amendment to the land use and development code that would create a sewer impact fee for parts of Main Street. Item number 4 is a public hearing, land use and development code amendment, private ways standards. Proposed amendment to the land use and development code that would replace one lot private way standards with backlot standards. As I mentioned, item 5 has been tabled. Item 6 is a discussion, subdivision amendment, Park South Condominium Owners Association and Nicholas and Jenny Flagg, Park South Amendment. A request to change 2,185 square feet, parcel A for 2 parcels, B and C, 438 square feet and 16,000.1 square feet within Park South. Parcel A to be dedicated to the town of Gorham as a public way, map 24, lot 10 and 17. Zone urban expansion, The applicant is presented by Stephen Selleck, President of Park South Condominium Owners Association. And item 7 is a discussion, site plan amendment, Cottage Advisors, Maine Limited Liability Corporation, Pheasant Knoll impact fees, a request to waive school impact fees for the subdivision. Zoned CP Kasperzak, map 46, lot 11.4, represented by Robert Gorgitis, I hope I pronounced that correctly, with Maine Planning Associates. Item 8, discussion, site plan, Gen X Capital Partners, Limited Liability Corporation, Luxury Motor Toys, a request for a site plan approval for 40 condominium garage units with associated clubhouse, zoned OCI, map 34, lot 3.003, represented by John Witten, Jr., PE with Haley Ward. And the first item we have is a public hearing. We would like to hear from staff, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. The first item is a zoning map amendment. The proposed parcel is proposed to be rezoned from urban residential expansion to South Gorham Crossroads. The comp plan allows some latitude in abutting lots to be identified as their abutting zoning district in the future land use plan. Staff has no concerns and would answer any questions the board has.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. I'd like to mention to the board that I have a perhaps conflict of interest, and I would like to be recused from this item. I live on Newton Drive, and this directly affects me, and I would ask you to vote to allow me to recuse.
Does that require a vote?
It
Yes.
does.
It does.
Yes.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to allow Mr. Hager to recuse himself from item 1.
David Rose, I second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
5. 1 abstention. At this time, I'd like to call forward anyone, well, we've had the update from the town. Anyone from the public who would like to make public comment, please come forward, state your name and address, and please remember to direct your comments to the board. You are allowed to ask any questions that you may have. We won't be able to answer a question while you answer it, but we'll take notes and consider it, and then have a discussion following public hearing. So I'll invite anybody to come forward at this time.
Good evening. My name is Rick Foley. I live at 14 Newton Drive here, and as the telemarketer said, go ham. I was kind of surprised to see this on the agenda, looking at it online today, because there was no notification. All the other previous hearings, I'd received something in the mail. I'm wondering how many other abutters were also left in the dark in this. And that being the case, this may not be ripe for this to go forward. And I would strongly suggest that it be tabled until such time as all abutters up against that property change line have been notified. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Is the applicant not here? I'm sorry, did you want to comment? I apologize, I didn't see you out there.
Good evening, Andy Morrill from BH2M. We don't have a whole lot to add to that. Our summary letter to you guys kind of summarizes what we're trying to do. I'm not going to go down through that any more detailed.
Okay.
So with that,
I just wanted to give you the opportunity.
Yep, I appreciate that. Thank you. If you guys have questions, we're more than happy to answer them. So.
Thank you. Last call for public hearing. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion of this item, and we'll open it up to the board for questions and discussion.
Well, I guess I'll just throw the question over to staff, with your permission. Has there been proper notification of this public hearing?
Yes, so the notification required under state law has been followed. There's no requirement in this type of zoning amendment to notify the abutters.
There is no requirement to notify abutters. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Does that raise questions or concerns?
No, I guess we move on.
No questions.
Yeah. I do have a question on the topic when we get to that, if we're there.
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah. So there was one question raised in the packet of whether there would be the zoning change would apply to the outsale lot. Andy.
Yeah, so the current landowner sold off that outsale lot to an abutter previously, prior to this applicant becoming involved, so that outsale parcel does not need to be part of the rezoning.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman. Did Andy introduce himself?
Did, but go ahead.
He did, Andy Morrow,
Sorry.
BH2M, yes.
Yeah, he
I'm
did.
sorry,
Yeah.
pardon me.
No problem.
I was reading something, so I was double checking.
Does this rezoning change anything that I mean, we've done a site walk of the area. We've seen the preliminary plan. Does this rezoning change anything based on what we've already seen?
As far as the layout of the development?
Yes.
Yes. So by going to the South Gorham Crossroads District, the units are now required to be multi-family, multi-unit, meaning you need at least 3 units per building. 3 units being the minimum, correct, Tom?
Correct.
So as you recall, previously the applicant was proposing duplexes. Obviously that's not going to be the layout moving forward. And by going to the South Gorham Crossroads, the density requirements are different. So I would envision more units and laid out in a 3, 4, 5 unit building, something like that. So yes, the layout would be, the building layout will be quite different. I think the roadway infrastructure will probably be pretty similar to what we had come forward with. Maybe some of those cul-de-sacs that spurred off the roadway will no longer be required, is what we're thinking.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, two questions. So, number one, Andy, I guess this is a zoning change that you are requesting.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
So if it was not granted, what would happen?
I guess the applicant would need to decide whether they wanted to move forward with the project in the previous layout that was presented to you guys for a sketch plan.
Yeah. So, in other words, does this give you more density? Are you going to get more units this way?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
For the staff, how common is it for change in zoning requests and to support a specific development?
On projects like this, if they're in the budding zones, I wouldn't say uncommon, but we don't see them a lot either. I think really the request came from hearing the board and the butters' concerns regarding public water, right? Public water was needed to, one, alleviate concerns of the abutting, of the people in the existing neighborhood, and then serve this development. So how could we look to have a development that meets the requirements and supports public water extension? I think that's why the applicant moved forward with this proposal. If he goes back to the other one, I'm not quite sure whether the calculation will require that public water extension based on that other zoning's density. It's very close, so it's on the fence. So I believe I spoke correctly, Andy. If I didn't, just let me know.
Yeah, we ran the numbers previously, and that previous layout wasn't required to extend public water, but again, the applicant really would like to extend public water to this project, both for the benefit of their project as well as the Newton and Shirley development. So that's, like Tom said, that's kind of why we're here, is to help us offset the costs of these water extensions. We'd like to try to get more units out of it. Yeah.
So, all right, Andy, this is helpful. I think maybe if you'd given us the pitch before on this, so we know, understand why you're bringing this forward this way.
Yep.
So, in other words, with the greater density, more units, your financials are going to look better for investing in bringing public water
Correct.
to this site.
Correct.
And without it, I remember, it was really marginal.
Yeah, I mean, technically, without it, we weren't required to extend public water, but, the applicant really wanted to. It felt like, it benefited this area and this development to extend the public water. So, we're trying to find a way to make that work.
Okay, and this is public water but not sewer?
Correct, public water.
Yeah, okay.
David Burrows with a question. I remember on the site walk, we found that there's a lot of ledge, and that led us to question the viability of conventional septic systems. Does increasing the density make any difference? Does it help? Combine sewer maybe would be more economical?
Yeah, so that's an item we're going to have to work out as we kind of work through the subdivision process. As you guys know, the town ordinance limits how many septics you can have per unit and per building. So by having less buildings on the parcel, we may end up with less septic systems. They may be larger, but there's less septic systems. So we've looked at the parcel, and there is definitely some ledge out there. We're going to have to do some, test pits to make sure we can get these septics to work. But we've looked at it preliminarily, and we're very confident we could make the septics work with the layout that we have in mind. So going from the layout that we had to the layout we're envisioning, I don't think you're going to see a huge change in the septic layout.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So I guess just one thing, I want to come back to the original comment from one of the neighbors who spoke here, in that, this project's going to change in nature. There was, if I recall, on the site walk, there were, a number of abutters and neighbors who joined in, and I would hope that they would get a good informed package about what you're doing, because you are changing the nature of the project with this zoning change.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And our intent would be to come back to the planning board, if this zone change were to go forward, to come back to the planning board with a sketch plan of our project. And I would certainly encourage us to have another site walk if the board felt so inclined to look at that sketch plan before we jump into the design. So that's certainly our intent, is to come back to you with a sketch plan and start the process over if we were to go to this new layout of a project.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
Great to come to us. I know you have to, but I just really hope you keep the abutters and the neighbors well informed.
No, we will certainly do that.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Any further discussion? Yes.
I have a clarification question, I suppose. So this being my very first planning board meeting, and I'm still kind of getting used to the process of it, my question in reading the proposal came up about how, and now I'm understanding that you've had a site walk already, but immediately I wondered how the neighbors were feeling about it. It looks to me like you're taking Newton Drive and Shirley Lane, which are currently dead ends, and turning them into a through street.
That's correct.
So that, to me, would make a big change to that neighborhood, and so that's where I was concerned about what the community was feeling on that.
So I was just going to comment that in the previous submission, that was consistent with the plan that was already before the board and discussed and included in the site walk. So that's not a change or an update. It's really specific to the density of the project. The boundaries of the project haven't changed. The road layout hasn't changed. It's just really the number of units per parcel, I guess, the density.
Which is the zoning change.
Which is needed by the zoning change, yes. Did I get that right?
Correct. So what the board is looking at tonight is just the zoning, right? Andy provided the sketch plan, which wasn't required. We're just looking at the zoning, so we're not looking at the subdivision, we're not looking at that part, we're looking at just, does the planning board want to move forward with or recommend? So just so you know, you give a recommendation to the council, and the council makes the ultimate decision of whether to move forward with the zoning amendment or not. So tonight, we're just hearing what's the planning board's recommendation to the council regarding this proposal.
So I appreciate that, and the town council will also have a public hearing opportunity. So this would just go back to the town council. There would be a public hearing opportunity then.
And yes, if the board moved it tonight, it would be on for public hearing at the council's meeting next month.
Right. And then there'll be further opportunities for the public to weigh in when the site plan comes back in front of the board.
This is David Burrows, just confirming, Andy, that the attachment B site sketch plan from August 18th, that's the former version. There is not a current version, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right. You're waiting for the zoning determination before you do a sketch plan of the increased density version site plan.
That's correct, yes.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yep. We're ready.
All right. Should I make a motion?
We need a motion.
All right. This is David Walsh. I move to send the proposed zoning map amendment to change the zoning of map 8, lot 10 from urban residential expansion to South Gorham Crossroads District to the town council with recommendation for adoption.
Is there a second?
Barbara Nichols, I will second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? I'm sorry, is there any other discussion or comment? Thank you. All in favor? 4? Opposed? 1?
And do we discuss why we vote?
Well, that's why I was giving the chance for a discussion, so if you'd like to have that time now, that's fine.
I voted in favor of it, but I'm curious to know what other people have to say about it.
Sure.
My concern would be the increase in the density and the area, ability to handle the increase. So I voted no.
Thank you. Mr. Hager, I'd like to invite you back to the podium.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Moving along, item number 2 is a public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Home Occupation Standards, proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code that would create a village home occupation overlay district and amend home occupation standards. Can we hear from staff, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what the council is looking to do regarding home occupation is to allow some greater flexibility for home occupations really in the area of Little Falls in the Gorham Village sections of town. In your packet, you'll see that basically this new or flexible occupation, home occupation would allow for not more than 10 people. It would allow for retail stores. It would allow for more of the dwelling unit to be occupied by the home occupation. And currently, the thought is to utilize the small dwelling overlay district as this new home occupation kind of section of town. It's a little bit complex, but you may want to forward to a committee to kind of delve into it, but we'd answer any questions the board has this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. This is a public hearing. If there is anyone that would like to speak to this item, please come to the podium, state your name for the record and your address. Going again, anyone, please? I see no one rising. I will close the public hearing. Thank you. Members of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a few questions. David Walsh. Tom, what is a medical marijuana caregiver?
Basically, someone who grows marijuana for sale as a medical product. So they're called caregivers. The state requires us to allow them to be occupied in certain parts of town, and we have a little ability to regulate them.
So they're giving care to the plant. Okay, that's an odd one. Okay, and then it shows that they are shown as an exception versus other businesses, and why is that?
Say that again?
Well, in reading it through, it's I have to find the exact language. It just shows there are, say, medical marijuana caregivers are kind of shown as an exception versus other businesses. And just different rules for them. Why is that?
Because the growing and the selling of marijuana can be a nuisance. So there are specific requirements that we outline as medical marijuana to ensure the protection of residential abutters to those uses. So that's why we have a whole section regarding medical marijuana growers, and it's very specific and very detailed of what can and can't be done.
Okay. Now understanding that this is talking about the growers, I understand a little bit more. Thank you. So just a couple questions on the maps. In the Little Falls area, you have the red line, at least in the map I'm looking at, is that district, that overlay district that you're looking to apply. And then in the Little Falls area, there is the LFVCD, sorry.
Little Falls Village Center.
Yeah, and you've left a couple lots out of that. Just from a practicality standpoint, why would it not include that entire zone within Little Falls?
We just identified that as a starter. The planning board can make a recommendation to include that. I think that was excluded because I think there was a new house just recently built there, and I actually don't even think it's finished yet, but it's under construction, but
okay.
I think probably that's why.
I guess I would just ask, from a standpoint of clean lines.
Yeah. Well, that's the small dwelling overlay, so it only pertains to older structures, so if it was just built, it wouldn't pertain to that, so that's why it probably got left out in that overlay. So and then looking within the Gorham Village area, I noticed like along School Street, there's the line is not even. It juts in and out of certain lots and others. Is that because it only applies to older structures? Yeah, my guess is we were looking to include it on that, and a lot of those are university properties that we kind of excluded, so. Right. Okay. That was all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. If I may, if I understand you correctly, so we just show straight lines right now for colorization in the Little Falls area, and you're suggesting that we would fill in. Yeah, I think he's talking, he's like on this one here, like the north end almost into Wyndham. He's saying we excluded that. It's a big parcel that kind of almost goes to towpath. He asked why we excluded that. That was excluded because there was no dwelling unit on it, and it wouldn't have met the standards for the small dwelling overlay. That's why it was excluded. So I think we could look to revise any requirements or any overlay the planning board is looking to add to it. That'd be fine. In several of these parcels, we're just bisecting right through the property. So are we really saying half of this lot is in this district and the other half is not? Or are we going to say the entire parcel?
Yeah, so regarding the Little Falls Centers District, that's going to we're working on a rezone with North Star between Gorham and Wyndham. So that whole zoning district is going to be redone here relatively quickly. So that Little Falls Village Centers District is going to be changed or recommended to be changed as part of that revitalization plan we just completed.
Thank you. I'm looking at the bottom of page 3 of the notes that we got. Item 13, a home occupation shall not be interpreted to include the following, and letter B says daycare center. And then in item 14, letter B, it says daycare home. Is this a play on words? Is a daycare home different than a daycare center?
Oh, absolutely. Number of kids.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Please, Colonel?
I was going to ask, is this just an attempt to align the district better with our comprehensive plan, or is there something pushing us to do this now? Has there been a request, or?
Well, the council's looking to give more flexibility for commercial uses.
Yeah,
in
so
and around.
similar to the downtown district that, or.
Correct. So basically,
urban office district.
what they're looking to do is to still have those units be residential in nature because they are in residential neighborhoods. They're looking for, if it's still residential and it abuts one of these village areas, does it make sense to give those people in those dwelling units flexibility to do commercial uses there? So that's what they're proposing. It's kind of like right on the edge of not being too commercial and still having residential character and feel. So that's what they were trying to kind of tie with. The floor area can only go to 50% because it's a home occupation, so it still has to function like a home. So there's a kind of trying to figure out a commercial use, but making it, I guess, too overly.
Yeah, I saw limited, no retail, limited traffic, 10 to 10 vehicle trips per day, et
Yes.
cetera. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
David Burrows. I'm not sure this is the same map we saw last time we reviewed this, especially about the village. And I remember Preble Street specifically being included in the new district. Is this the same map, or am I confusing this with another?
Different issue.
Good, thanks.
A different zoning amendment
Okay,
previously.
that helps clarify my confusion.
I had the same confusion. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Anyone else? Are we comfortable with the language as presented by staff? If we are, or do we want to send it to one of our two subcommittees? Further discussion.
I'd say move it along.
Entertain a motion?
So I'm missing you, Jim. All right, if I may, David Walsh. I said I'm missing you, Jim. I'm missing you in the motions. If I may, a move to amend the Chapter 2 General Standard of Performance, Section 2-15 Home Occupation Standards, as drafted. This is not back to to the council, is it? But so it is to recommend as drafted. Period.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Bill Benson, I'll second.
I will vote in favor of this to move this along. I'd like to hear from everyone else, please.
In favor.
In favor.
Mr. Delaney?
Absolutely.
Ms. Nichols?
I will vote in favor of it, just to move it along.
Mr. Burrows?
In favor of it?
I have no issues with it.
Thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Moving along, we have item 3. Item 3 is a public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Sewer Impact Fees. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code that would create a sewer impact fee for parts of Main Street. I'd like to hear from staff, please.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the town of Gorham contracted with North Star Planning to draft the proposed Main Street sewer impact fee before you this evening. The sewer impact fee will be utilized to pay for that section of sewer. If you remember, there will be some gravity sewer, a pump station, and then it would pump over to Mosier's Corner, just east of Shamrock Drive to the two big industrial parcels, and then also serve the land of, on the opposite side, Dolph Peace, and then all the Richardson Place, oh, there you go. Carol's holding up the map. The Richardson Place, the small, I think that is a medical office, as well as J.P. Noonan's industrial project. So it would serve all those parcels. the planning board may remember the sewer design was part of the Core X project, and it will be built in coordination with that project. And then this impact fee is just to reimburse the town the cost to build that sewer infrastructure. And with that, we'd answer any questions the planning board has.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to address this issue, please go to the podium, state your name for the record, and your address, please. Going twice. Anyone, please? Public hearing. I don't see anyone rising. I will close the public hearing. Thank you. Members of the board?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned this is Core X. I think this is the cold storage
Correct.
that you're referring to.
Yes. It'll be built at the same time as that site plan.
So this impact fee would apply to other construction that would take place subsequent to that project.
Correct.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
Just one question. When I looked at the map, it has in the description, you have the Area A, Area B. I understand Area A looks like it's all gravity, and Area B is going to require additional investment by anyone who chooses to build on those sites to connect into this pipe. What is it about that area? Is it just the elevation?
Yeah, so the town is proposing, so if you see where Martin's Point is on this aerial map that was provided, which is at Moses Corner, we're proposing to locate a gravity basin right at the intersection of, actually just a little west of the intersection of Mosier and Main Street. Due to the cost, trying to save costs, we didn't have the funds to extend gravity sewer up that road any further. So there's a small section of gravity sewer that would be required to serve the parcel that is the self-storage as well as the parcel across the road. So what we identified in the sewer impact fee is that anybody who required to extend that gravity sewer would get a basically credit on the impact fee.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Walsh.
All right. And so if this isn't granted, what happens to all of this project at the Corex warehouse?
I think it still goes forward, but the town does not recoup the ability to get any, so whoever hooks on does so without paying a sewer impact fee.
Oops. Okay.
I guess I don't have to raise my hand anymore. Mr. Poirier, so do I understand this correctly, that the town will then run sewer to Corex at their own expense without recouping any funds?
No, for Core X, we're recouping funds. I'm saying beyond that.
Okay.
So the cost for the sewer, I think Sebago has it at
2.3, I think.
2.3 million. That's the cost to run sewer. So basically, the impact fee is looking to make the town whole on that cost to basically run sewers.
Percentages all the way through, I see that.
Correct.
I'm just curious, Mr. Norton, any chance the engineer, is that a fixed fee? Are we good with that? Is that going to be static?
That fee is the estimate from the engineer.
Estimate, thank you. I see estimated cost, it doesn't say estimated engineer. I'm just, having been
It's the engineer's estimate.
my previous, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? On page 6, we have a series of motions. Please, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, I move to amend Chapter 7, impact fees, to add Section 7-5, Main Street Sewer Extension Impact Fee as drafted.
Is there a second, please?
Second, Delaney.
Delaney, thank you. I'll vote in favor of this. I want the town to be able to recoup this and have the users pay their fair share. That's my opinion. I'd like to hear from everyone, please.
I would say the same, David Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows.
Yeah. Dave Walsh, the same?
Mr. Walsh.
Absolutely.
Mr. Delaney?
100%.
Ms.
I
Nichols?
agree as well.
Colonel?
Makes sense to me.
Thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. You doing okay?
Doing
Okay.
all right. Thank you very much.
Item 4, ladies and gentlemen, public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Private Way Standards. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code that would replace one-lot private way standards with backlot standards. I'd like to address this, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. After reviewing and drafting review memos for the planning board for quite some time now for these one-lot private ways, it is something that takes a lot of time for an applicant for a building lot, which is usually for a relative. There's an occasion when it's sold off, but predominantly it's somebody who is a family member that people are trying to give a lot to. The purpose for our one-lot standard right now is to create frontage on a road for the lot. In this case, it would take away the requirement for the required amount of frontage and allow for a smaller road frontage, which would be 25 feet along the existing road. So you would come off the existing road in a smaller footage, go back the distance you need to build a home in the, literally, that's why it's called a back lot, in the back of an existing home, creating a lot. And the standards here lay out what those lots must look like. So when you get to a spot where you want to put your lot, it's required to be at least the distance of the required frontage for that zoning district. So it's not necessarily on the road, but it is in the back. So the lot's required to be wide enough to have everything. Setbacks would be the same. This would not be a planning board review. It would be by right. So as long as they designed it to this standard, they would be allowed to apply for a building permit through the code office. Apply for a driveway opening permit from the Public Works Department and code office combination that we have, rather than coming to the planning board. So that's generally the setup.
Streamline.
Streamline it a little more.
Very
Yep.
good.
Lower cost for them and the town, quite frankly, for staff time to bring all these things through the planning board.
Thank you. Yes, questions, please.
Yes, I have a question. I just want to,
Please make sure you...
I'm sorry, Barbara Nichols. So when you have a private way now, so you have one property on a private way, and they want to put a lot in the back, currently, there are regulations for how much road frontage. That's being shrunk down to 25 foot.
Along the existing road.
Right, along the...
So in order to come off the existing road, you would need 25 feet.
But it looks like it's doing away with sightline problems.
It would not.
Okay.
You would still need to make sure, and this is where the public works and driveway permitting come in. They always look at where this is located on whatever road you're applying for the driveway permit on. And they will recommend, based on good sight lines, where to place the driveway. And they still would do that.
Okay, so the part here on the street classification and design standards, where it has private ways, I can see where the one lot has been crossed out. And when you get down to site distances, it says NA, but that is not pertaining to the site distances, the sight lines when you come out onto a main road off of a private way.
I can speak to that. Are we specifically looking at table 1?
Yes.
Yeah, those factors for site distance are actually K factors, and those are factors that go into the horizontal and vertical geometry of the road. So those K factors aren't linear feet. So
Okay.
that site distance, or this table doesn't represent an actual site distance, as I think you're referring to.
Okay.
Point of order. This is the schedule is a public hearing. Have we opened it to the public yet?
Public hearing is closed.
No, you already, well,
No, I'm sorry, we have not gone to the public hearing. We're still hearing from staff
then
and
we
asking staff questions.
okay, all right. Typically, they'll come afterwards.
No,
but
yeah, point of order, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Any other questions for staff?
David Burrows, I'm just trying to get a handle on the shape of this, and now that it's going from 40 feet to 25 feet, it's wide enough for a driveway. Is one advantage that it consumes less land and would require the property owner to actually own a little bit less land on the street, therefore making that land available to another buyer? And my next question is, what is the distance from the street to where the property needs to be its 40-foot wide zoning required width? And hopefully I asked those questions in an understandable way.
So I believe currently the one-lot private way requires a 50-foot right-of-way, where this would limit that down to 25 feet. I'm not sure its purpose is to allow for any more road frontage for that existing parcel, but it would reduce that down to half of what's required now for one-lot private ways. As far as the second question, I'm not quite sure.
The distance from the street to where the property goes from 25 feet to 40 feet?
I think that's going to be determined based on the layout of the existing property and what they're breaking off for the.
I'm just thinking it should be deep enough to allow that land to be usable from the street back to whatever distance that is. Otherwise, it's just a narrow strip of land that, would make the land on either side of it maybe less usable unless it were deep enough to make it worthwhile.
Both lots have to conform to the zoning district in which they are in. So it's only the access that we're allowing something a little smaller. So the lot in the front needs to comply with the ordinance frontage requirements on the existing road. Then we're allowing for this 12-foot driveway
Okay.
coming back. Then the lot in the back has to comply with the frontage requirements. Once you get back to where you want to build, that part needs to conform with the frontage requirements.
Got it.
So then you still need enough land to comply with the minimum amount of lot size
All
you
right,
need.
that helps.
So that description gets you to
Okay.
where you need to be.
I would just like to see a graphic of that. It would help understand better, but I got it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, just a question of staff on this. When I'm reading through, on bottom of page 2, chapter 2, section 2-5, driveways A1. Driveways shall be located no less than 40 feet from any street intersection. So as I understand what you're saying is, I got this driveway going back to the flag lot. It's going to be 25 feet, but it has to be 40 feet away from the greater than 40 feet or greater away from the closest intersection. Is that always manageable?
So this is a function of our access management standards as well. So if you have a lot that they're looking to do a back lot provision on, it would limit them to, and they were on a corner lot. You know,
Yeah.
They abutted 2 streets.
Right, that's what I was
It would
thinking
limit
about.
them from not being able to run that driveway on the intersection side. Or they'd have to be able to achieve at a minimum that 40 feet away from the intersection, so you don't have an access management conflict.
So if they have 30 feet and the rest of the lot is conforming in terms of size, the back lot is conforming and the other distances, then they would not be able to put in,
Yes, if they were
essentially
right-
make a back.
If they were right up against their minimums and that is all that they could achieve, they would not be able to do that driveway there.
You think that's going to come up much, Chuck?
I hate to say never, but I would imagine that'd be really specific. My guess is where that crops up, you probably have enough road frontage from that original parcel to buck that driveway just far enough away. Plus that 25 feet, you can move that driveway kind of
Sure.
in and around that, as long as you maintain your setback requirements.
And if it's an intersection, so I'm just giving an example, so say you're in the rural district and so that first front lot needs 200 feet anyway, so if it's at the intersection, it's gonna have to be 200 feet and then.
I'm thinking more in a residential area with someone's splitting a lot. Yeah, they have a deep lot, but it's narrow.
Yeah.
And, you're in a grid pattern or something in a typical residential section. Sometimes you have a trapped piece of land, in back. And I'm trying to think, how would that apply and would it prevent someone from developing it?
There may be switching of driveway, there may be ability to make it work. It may not be as clean cut as they want, but I think we can, probably 80-90% of them, we can figure out how to get them there.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just mentioned shared entrance to Tom as well.
Yeah. And that could be, and that's described in there as well. Yeah, right. And also then in the next one, at the bottom of the page, talking about for collector and higher order streets, you want to have a turnaround, so you're not backing out on the street. I get it. Again, is that always going to be manageable? Because, again, I'm thinking more in a residential area where you don't, it's great to have a turnaround. It's wonderful to come out straight, but is it always possible?
I think that turnaround standard comes from two things. One is so people don't back out as well, but is also to allow for ambulances and other emergency vehicles. So if you're allowing these lots to be located behind another lot, they're going to be longer, right? They're going to be a couple hundred feet. If an ambulance or a fire truck has to show up to render assistance, the ability for them to turn around instead of backing out a long driveway is to the benefit of the people that need the emergency. So we were looking to give the fire department the ability to kind of identify that turnaround.
Very good. All right, thank you.
Any more questions for staff? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment on private way standards. Is there anyone that would like to speak? If so, please come to the podium, state your name for the record and your address. I see no one rising. I will close the public hearing. Members of the board, page 5, we have a motion.
David Burrows, I'll make a motion recommending for adoption. Move to send the proposed Land Use and Development Code amendment to implement standards for backlots and driveways to the planning boards, to the town council with a recommendation for adoption.
Is there a second?
It's Bill Benson, I'll second.
I would like to go around the table, please. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this before we vote.
I think this will streamline things for the town and for the residents, so I support it.
Thank you, Colonel.
Long overdue. I appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Delaney?
It's a consensus. I agree, absolutely.
Makes sense to me. It makes sense to change.
Mr. Burrows?
Yes, it makes sense to me, so I'm going to vote in
I'm in
favor.
agreement. It helps, again, streamline. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you. As we mentioned earlier, item 5 has been tabled. Nothing for that. We'll move on to item 6, please. This is a discussion, subdivision amendment, Park South Condominium Owners Association and Nicholas and Jenny Flagg. Park South Amendment, a request to exchange 2,185 square feet, parcel A, for 2 parcels, B and C, 438 square feet and 16,000.1 square feet within Park South. Parcel A to be dedicated to the town of Gorham as a public way, map 24, lot 10 and 17, zoned urban expansion. The applicant is represented by Stephen Selleck, president of Park South Condominium Owners Association. Do we have staff?
Right. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a request by 2 different applicants in that they want to amend some lot lines in an existing condominium subdivision called Park South, which is off of South Street, heading toward the intersection by the Cumberland Farms. They want to correct 2 areas where driveways are encroaching on each other's property lines. One's coming off a private road, which was an error, and so they're trying to redesign things to rectify the situation. So the items of note here are that there is no new construction, there are no new dwelling units, no more lots. It's just a reconfiguration of something that exists. They're proposing to transfer the square footage from Leo Lane, and they're swapping some open space to do that. So one of the things that we identified is that they need to do their net residential calculation again so that the staff can check and make sure that they're still complying with the amount of open space required within the development. So my understanding is, and we have received new plans, and you have some 11 by 17s in front of you that were submitted. The staff has not had a chance to review any of the calculations, so we can't comment on the updated information this evening. And with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Steinman. So I understand, in a manner of speaking, it has not been checked.
The new plan was just submitted, so it has not been checked by staff. But essentially, the idea is the same. So a presentation, a general discussion can occur, and then possibly you table it, put it on a consent agenda while staff checks the plans and make sure they will comply with the ordinance.
Thank you. Are there any questions for members of the staff? Please, Ms. Nichols.
What are plats? There are plats and plans, and I couldn't figure out what a plat was.
It's almost the same thing. A plat and a plan just are the descriptions of the lots, the driveways, the building, and the development on a piece of property. So it's basically the same thing. A plat and a plan are 2 different descriptions of the same thing. They're synonymous.
Okay.
Plats is a word that is used in outside of New England quite often.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the staff? Mr. Selleck, you have the floor.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair, planning board members, planning staff. We have a really straightforward project. We have 2 encroachments, one being at the end of Kiara, beginning of Leo Lane. And then,
Mr. Selleck, please, there should be a microphone on the podium if you don't mind, please.
Oh, sorry.
No, there should be a microphone.
Oh, right here, sorry.
Thank
I
you.
didn't see that.
Don't forget to turn it on.
How's that? I don't hear anything.
There it is.
Good.
It takes a second.
Huh? Can you hear it?
Yep.
There.
Great. So we have two driveway encroachments. One at the end of Kiera Lane, beginning of Leo Lane. This encroachment actually was built to town standards. When they built Park South, they extended the road 50 feet beyond where Kiera Lane ended. Nick, when he built his house, has a very small encroachment, about 430 square feet. We've been working on this project for about 2 years, working with Nick Flagg to come up with an agreement. We had several over and over. We've been working on it for 2 years. We came up with an agreement of doing a land swap. We brought it to the Park South board. We brought it to a meeting, and it was approved by 67% of the vote. It was actually 33 votes to 1 to approve this project. Within this project, Nick is also graciously going to let us keep our snow removal equipment right there. It's a very small area. It's just an agreement for a 5-year lease, and it can be renewed every 5 years. Again, they're very small encroachments, and we're trading our encroachment for this land up here, which is about 0.37 acres. The gross area of the subdivision was originally 25.49 acres, and it's going to 25.11 acres, a total change of about 0.3 acres. When Park South was approved back in 2001, the minimum lot size was 40,000 square feet. Now it's urban residential expansion zone. It's 20,000 square feet per lot. Which I actually got the comments from the planning board last Thursday about 4:30. I actually updated my plan on Friday and delivered it to the office on Monday morning. So the net density change, we were allowed 36 units back in 2001, and in 2024 we can have 44 units. The only comments we got from the planning division reviewed our project was they wanted to see the net density calculation. And they had a couple changes in the conditions of approval, which was one word in one sentence. And the other sentence that changed was, from the original package, was that the original conditions of approval remain in effect. That was it. So, with that said, I'd like to ask for approval tonight with the small change. I mean, the biggest change is she's asking for is to put a net density calculation on there. I think it's kind of mute since we've gone from a 40,000 square foot allowance per unit to 20,000 square feet today. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sully?
No.
Thank you. We'll now discuss this ourselves. Thank you. I see in our packet, I have a couple questions, and please correct me if I'm out of line here. On page 5, I'm sorry, at the very bottom, page 5. Letter C, preliminary plan review, and we start with item number 2. Item 1 for legal purposes.
There's probably a paragraph that's number 1, but we can double check on this.
Okay.
That describes something that is not a finding of fact necessity.
Okay. It just looks odd seeing number 2. I wasn't sure. Thank you. Moving along to page 6. So we have a lot of information that's highlighted in yellow. Would you please explain to the board?
What we have been doing is highlighting things in yellow that pertain to the items of note or a staff comment that has yet to be addressed. So the reason this is highlighted in yellow is because we want to make sure that it still meets the minimum requirements for density. And we needed their new calculation in order to know that.
Thank you. So the fact that it says finding the Park South condominium subdivision amendment conforms to the comprehensive plan with all pertinent state and local codes and ordinances really is not true.
That is a future decision yet to be made.
Thank you for the clarification. Same way, likewise, on page 8, half of the sheet is yellow, so we have some things that are missing.
True.
Thank you.
All based on that calculation.
Last comment from me on page 9, C, final plan review. Is this the item that's number 1 that should be back
No.
on page? Okay.
No, this is a specifically separate section.
Okay.
So if you notice on the previous page, 5, C is preliminary plan,
Yes, thank you.
and on page 9 is final plan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Members of the board?
I guess the question would be, can this, is information such, you have to review the calculations. If you find it appropriate, could this be put on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that if it's possible.
So is there another option to pass it, pass this with a condition?
With a condition
Chairman,
that,
Condition that the density requirement be met? So it's passed with that condition? I mean, we've done those types of things before, so and this seems pretty straightforward to me, so.
and if it's not met, we
Right.
send it back to the planning board.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir, please identify yourself.
Bill took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was going to recommend. What I was going to suggest is, could it be a condition of approval?
Thank you. You are?
I'm Nick Flagg. I'm the owner of
Okay.
the adjacent property.
Thank you, Mr. Flagg, I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
I did have one other question. This is just more for my understanding and hopefully for clarification. It says that parcel A will be conveyed to the Condominium Owners Association and dedicated to the town of Gorham as a public street. So that's the first time I've seen that language where something's been dedicated to the town of Gorham. I'm not sure what that means. So I'd just like some clarification on that.
To, it's a bold statement by the applicant. They would offer it, this section of road, to the town for adoption. And if the town chooses to adopt it, they would take over this section of road. If they don't choose, it would remain,
Then that little
Private.
section would remain part of the condo association. Not the whole road, just that little section.
one section.
Okay.
I see Mr. Flagg. Yes, sir.
Sorry, one more thing. For those of you that aren't aware, for over 20 years now, this section here, what is it, parcel A, for all intents and purposes, as Steve had mentioned, was built to town standards and has been maintained and used as town road. So all the standards are there, the curbing is there, the construction is there. It's really just a formality of having it be accepted. So it wasn't a private way, it wasn't, something we've recently done. It's been used that way for 20-something years.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's no snow on that photo.
So it's just this portion here where Kiara Lane dead ends.
Thank you, Mr. Fleck. Anyone else on the board?
David Burrows. I don't see any, but my question is, are there any disadvantages or any drawbacks to the condo association for having this parcel change take place?
Steve can speak to that.
Without that, we have like 6 potential house sales in the next couple of years. If Nick hadn't been amicable, come up with an agreement, we would have problems with getting financing for those houses. Banks could recall the mortgages on say these 2 people's houses right here. That would be a disadvantage. The advantage would be, moving forward, we wouldn't have those encroachments.
Thank you.
Colonel, please.
I'm ready to make a motion, but I don't want to interrupt anybody else's questions.
Please proceed.
I move to grant approval for subdivision amendment for Park South Condominium Owners Association, Park South subdivision located on map 24, lots 10 and 17, on the suburban residential zoning district, based on findings of facts and conditions, with the specific condition that it meets the density requirement.
Thank you, Colonel. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Mr. Delaney, thank you. I'd like to go around the table, please. What is your thoughts on this? How will you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
David Burrows also in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows.
In favor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And Barbara Nichols, I would be in favor as well.
Thank you. Mr.
Absolutely
Delaney
in
in favor.
favor.
Colonel?
Yeah, I proposed it.
Sure. Well, sometimes someone else's opinion might sway
change,
your
yes.
idea. All right. I, too, am in favor of this. I wish you the best of luck. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving along, item 7 on our agenda, discussion, site plan amendment, Cottage Advisors, Maine Limited Liability Corporation, Pheasant Knoll impact fees, a request to waive school impact fees for the subdivision, zoned CZ Kaspersack, map 46, lot 11.4, represented by Robert Gorgitis with Maine Planning Associates.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
and
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
I have to just disclose I am a resident of Pheasant Knoll, and I purchased my home from Cottage Advisors, so I want to request that I be recused from this discussion.
I recommend, I will make the motion to allow David Walsh to recuse himself.
David Burrows, I second the motion.
I assume everyone will grant this without having to go through everyone. All those in favor?
In favor.
5 yeas, 1 absent. Thank you. Thank you. Could we have some input from staff, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The request is to review the recreation and open space and the middle school impact fees, not to waive them. It's to figure out what the actual fee should be based on the ordinance as written. The middle school impact fee is determined and payable for each unit, and it's based on the number of bedrooms in the unit. This is sort of general language. So for any other type of residential use, in which this one has been classified as age-restricted community, 55 and older, and certain descriptions in the contract zone and the agreements put in place when it was approved in 2004 was the original approval. And there's certain HUD descriptions and definitions of what a 55 and older community is and or elderly. And there is a specific definition for elderly, which is 62 years of age or older. Sort of background for the conversation. So when we get to the middle school impact fee, the calculation is determined by the anticipated number of middle school students that would be typically expected to live in a residential use, and the base impact fee is $84.92 per middle school student. So that calculation is the general one. And I'm just going to read down through some of the other points for this. The third one is any residential use that is permanently limited to occupancy by residents that are at least 65 years of age by binding legal restriction shall be exempt from the middle school impact fee. And number 4, any residential use that is permanently limited to occupancy by residents that are 55 years of age by binding legal resolution, restriction, that are consistent with the fair housing provision shall be exempt from 90% of the middle school impact fee. So, and then that gets you down to the adopted fee schedule, and by bedroom, number of bedrooms, and the apartment or condo, which this development has condos in multi-unit buildings. So for the, generally speaking, it is my belief that most of these are 2-bedroom units, and we'll have to discuss more with the applicant, but that's my understanding of most of these units. The number is $169.84 per unit.
Just
Continue
quickly,
on.
well, no, just quickly, the 3 bedrooms or more, that, the 424, that's for a multi-family unit. Or a duplex, it's 849.20.
You're confusing me a little bit, or I'm confused. I apologize. If it stipulates this in the ordinance, why are we voting on it? It says they're exempt. Then what's the decision? I don't understand the decision we're making.
They're not exempt, they pay 10%.
Okay, so what's the decision we're making? I don't understand.
So the question is, there's HUD standards and then there's the contract zone. So the contract zone says no kids 18 or under. So I think I'm not gonna speak for Mr. Howard, but I believe he's coming in saying, we understand HUD standards as you have to pay 10%. Our contract zone says no kids. Why are we required to pay 10%? And then, so if you look at the memo I completed from the town attorney, really what it comes down to is this discrepancy between the contract zone and the HUD requirements that says the town attorney has concerns, raised concerns this provision of the contract zone may be consistent with the requirements of fair housing laws, including the Housing for Older Persons Act. Based on this provision, I don't foresee the town enforcing no kids in that subdivision.
You're looking for a memo that was written today. The subject line is impact fees discussion, Pheasant Knoll subdivision.
That was,
It's one page, double-sided.
I think this is a little bit late for us to be reviewing this and making a decision, but I certainly look to the other members of the board. I mean, we have to review this and digest it.
So I understand this contract zone agreement was signed in 2004?
Correct.
And so now 20 years later, we're trying to amend the impact fees that are paid?
This is the first time the applicant has requested, yes, the reduction.
Wouldn't be retroactive, it's just applying for future builds?
Correct.
Please, Ms. Nichols.
I think this is on page 3 of 5, on the very first paragraph, where it states that at least one of the owners must be 55 or older at the time of purchase. But it doesn't say, I mean, it does state elsewhere in the document that no persons of 18 years of age or younger shall be permitted as a permanent resident, but it only really refers to one person has to be 55. So is that where the muddle is that it could potentially be?
Well, I think what the muddle is there are fair housing laws that require the 55, and then there's the contract zone that says the 18, no person can be 18 or under that is a permanent resident of that development. So that's what the contract zone says. So that's in addition to the federal housing laws that are in place. So what they're saying is we make our contract zone more restrictive than the fair housing laws by not allowing any kids as a permanent resident in that development.
And therefore, the town is at risk because someone who wanted to have someone living in that development under 18 years may have standing? Is that the opinion of the attorney?
The opinion of the attorney is, say somebody has a kid that's under 18, that's a permanent resident there, and the town finds out about it, takes them to court to get them out of there. She's saying because of fair housing laws, she doesn't think that, one, we would have the ability to remove that kid based on the contract zone because it's in violation of the Fair Housing Act.
Right, yeah.
So that's
they
the
have
provision.
standing, right.
Not only that is, for whatever reason that a kid is required to live with his grandparents, uncles, whatever they are, what's that going to look like if the town is trying to force people out of their homes because whether somebody is on deployment where they have to have the kid or a family member's passed away, the kid goes to live with them, it's not a good look for the town to go in and force that kind of requirement as long as it meets fair housing laws. If it was in violation of fair housing laws, that's something different, but I think if it meets fair housing laws and then we're the ones required to kick a kid out, I just think it wouldn't pass a straight face test.
Okay, so that's one issue, and then this other issue is the impact fees.
Yeah, so I think,
And we're more restrictive or less restrictive, or they're just saying now they've been paying a 10% and now they want to pay 0 on the impact fee for the middle school?
I'll let the applicant answer that, just.
Okay. Sure. Oh, that's up to.
David Burrows, I have a question for staff. So in effect, we are making the contract zone more in compliance with fair housing by doing this? We're amending the contract zone language?
No, we would have to do that separate, and that's a different discussion that we probably be having as we move forward. Should that contract zone be amended to meet fair housing law requirements?
Okay.
I think that's a discussion.
What happens meantime? I mean, it's still kind of in non-compliance?
Again, I don't think we will be the ones enforcing no kids in that development for a whole host of reasons that meets the fair housing laws.
Okay, thanks.
Most likely it would be somebody that wanted to move in and would ask the question of the real estate agents, really, at the time,
No, the association may be able
maybe.
to enforce that, but that's a private matter. It's not nothing the town's going to step in the middle of.
Any other questions for staff? Please, sir.
Hello, thank you. My name is Howard Hall. I'm the president of Cottage Advisors, MELLC. I think I can clarify a whole bunch of things. So there's, in the actual bylaws that you have for the fees, it says that if there's any calculation that you believe is not being levied correctly, or there isn't a definition for it, to come in front of this board. So there's really two things here. One, we do have, we can talk about HUD and what are we doing with HUD and all the rest of it, but the net of it is the contract zone says we can't have anybody living there being a permanent resident that's under 18 years of age. That's in the contract zone that we have with you. It's also in our deed restrictions for the homeowners, so it goes on record at the Registry of Deeds that they cannot have a resident under 18 years old occupy that property. So because of that, we're saying you have a fee that's levied, basically it's a simple formula. It's X amount of dollars per child that you think might make it into the middle school, and we're saying, by definition, we can't have any, because we have that specific language that says no one under 18 can be a resident, and to be in school, you need to be a resident of the town. So that's the first thing that we wanted to talk about on the school impact fee. And then the second thing that we wanted to talk about was the recreational open space fee, okay? And, staff, I believe, we've gone back and forth. So we've been working on this for a while. I know that we talked with Tom months and months and months ago about it. And then we had conversations with the town attorney, and then we had conversations with staff, and we finally got to a point where we believe we're in the right place. And what we're saying is that that we believe, based upon your ordinances, that our project is classified as an elderly project, and based on that, we should pay an elderly fee for the recreational impact fee. So we're not saying that we shouldn't pay anything. We're just saying we should be paying based on what you have as a standard for elderly. The problem is that your bylaw doesn't define elderly. That's the problem, and that's why we're here. But in the contract zone, our language with the town says we're elderly. But in the bylaw itself on the recreational impact fee, it says elderly dwelling units or congregated housing. So we say, okay, well, we're an elderly unit, dwelling unit, because that's what we are. We're age restricted. And so we believe we should be able to fit into that classification. And that's why we're here in front of the board to ask for that, because it's not defined anywhere. So it's pretty straight and simple math. In the bylaw, it tells you, it lays out, here's what we should charge per person, and or the recreational development is based upon people that live in a unit, and then there's averages, and then it's supposed to be $980 per capita per person. Okay, so elderly is 1.2 people, and an elderly unit housing is what it says. It doesn't say congregated, it just says unit housing for elderly or congregated. So we believe that we should be able to fit into that definition and pay that fee. Currently, we're being charged $2,949, which is the 3-bedroom, 2-family. And we've been talking about it with staff for 6 months and have pulled permits because we have contracts to deliver homes for people. And we said, okay, well, we'll pay this higher fee, but we want the opportunity to have somebody take a look at it and decide if we're being levied the right amount of money. So we're just looking, we're looking for fairness is what it comes down to, that's all. The other thing that I can say that supports our position is we went out, we counted how many residents are in Pheasant Knoll, okay? According to the definition here, you should have 3.2 people in each dwelling unit that's 3 or more. Sorry, 3 people in a 3 or more bedroom unit, and 1.2 for the elderly housing. Based on our calculations, we're a little bit more than the 1.2. We're 1.58. Nowhere near 3. Okay, so we're definitely closer to the 2 than we are to the 1.2 than we are to the 3. So that's the whole purpose of us being here. I mean, we have another 30, I think we've got another 34, 40 permits left. So it's, it's not a small amount of money, but we've already pulled 10 that we've already paid the higher fee, even though we did it in protest, under duress, I would say, because we had to keep going. So we're trying to do the right thing and have the right discussion.
Please, Mr. Poirier.
Just to help the board, so really for the board's discussion is, does the applicant continue to pay the 10% impact fees for the schools, right? Do you go with the contract zone to say it requires that he can't have kids, so he doesn't have to pay for the remaining developments? That's for the board. I'm going to clarify a little bit because the code officer has already determined that this development is not a dwelling unit in elderly congregate housing. Planning board can't overturn that decision. It's already been reviewed. That's an Avesta housing, it's multifamily, it's not this type of development. What you have to do is, and before you, is say, based on the information he provided, the 1.58, is that the number you use to calculate the impact fee moving forward? Or do you continue to do the single family dwelling? So really that's before you, is you utilize the 1.58 number that the applicant provided. If you want staff to do more research on elderly units to see what the per capita number is, we could do that. But really, it's identifying a new number that would be the impact fee going forward. It's not identifying the dwelling unit in elderly congregate care. That's already been determined by the code officer, and it's not this development.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Just to clarify, so I see where the 1.2 is coming from. And you take that 1.2 and multiply it by 980, and you come up with $1,176.
Correct.
And then in this second scenario, you have 1.58. If we use that figure, now you're paying $1,548.
Correct.
Is that an annual, or is that a
Per dwelling unit.
one-time, when the unit is sold?
Correct.
It's a one-time fee that goes to it?
Well,
No,
not when
it's
it's
actually
sold,
when
when
you
it's
pull
built.
your permit.
When you
You
pull
have
your
to
building
pay them
permit.
as part of your permit costs.
Okay, so it's when the unit is built?
No,
as a
so to
permanent?
be able to get the
Okay.
building built, you have to go in and apply for permits. So you have to pay building permit fees and then different impact fees, et cetera. So it's part of that initial package, so it's an upfront cost.
And the 1.2 is if it was an elderly? That's not what's being charged now? Now we're charging 10%?
No. So you're confusing. That's the rec impact fee you're talking about. That he's paying, right now he's paying the single family, actually not the dwelling unit in a two-family or multi-family dwelling unit. That's the fee he's paying.
Correct.
He's been paying that the whole time. He's been paying a duplex the whole time. Now, he requested that we look at the elderly congregate. We looked at it. It didn't meet that definition. So there's a provision that allows the planning board, if it's not identified as one of these categories, the planning board can set a new category. What the applicant is coming before you today is saying, we are asking that under the fair housing and the restricted developments, for age-restricted developments, we think 1.58 is the new number that should be utilized for the rec impact fee, not 3.2.
Just for clarity, we're talking about two completely different fees here,
Yes.
and they're in the same document. So we have item 1, which is for school impact fees, and item 2 is for rec fees.
Correct.
Just commingled. And I do see 2 motions on page 4.
Correct. One's for each fee.
So we do have a motion for each one, but the language is a little stiff maybe right now.
It was a clear.
within earshot. Is there some kind of
Yeah, so
message?
I'll change one of the motions real quick, because it's going to be based on 1.58.
$13 something.
1548.40.
1548.40. 1.58 times 980. Someone double check that? I don't have a calculator.
840 is what I got.
1548.40?
Yes.
Thank you.
I agree to the new information. Didn't know. Didn't have that.
Thank you, Colonel.
Yeah, so question for the staff. So how does this potentially impact other contract zones and future developments?
I wouldn't take contract zones. I would more look to fair housing and age-restricted developments, 55 and older, 62 or older, that we should look to amend the rec impact fees to identify standards as well as per capita numbers for that. I mean, we're getting Mr. Hall's development numbers, which are true for that development, but is that a good average for developments of this type? I don't know, I haven't done that research.
And that would actually comply with fair housing at this point in time.
Correct.
Because right now, in terms of the middle school impact fee, you need to allow children to be there. So it muddles the question up, because somebody could come and say, well, you don't comply with fair housing laws. I'm moving in with my family. You have to sell to me. And then you have children in the school.
But to me, that's a different issue than the
It is.
the
It
impact
is.
fee.
But it is one for this, so we should update things a little bit moving forward.
Yes, Ms. Nichols, please.
Just a comment on what Tom was saying. It makes sense to have some sort of formula that you come up with, because, yeah, 1.58 is a good number right now for this facility, but that could change down the road, and there seems to be more elderly or adult communities going up because us baby boomers are out there. So that it seems like the town is going to have to deal with this maybe more going forward. And so to have a process.
And I guess I would like to know, and maybe we need to have more of a discussion, is the purpose in general, and I'd have to go back to the comprehensive plan, but are we trying to encourage more senior housing to be prioritized in the town, and by reducing impact fees, it's one way to do that? Because you can, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to get at the purpose of reducing the impact fees, specifically the recreation and open space. I mean, open space is, I don't know why somebody who's over 55 doesn't benefit from open space impact fee. So I'm struggling with that, and I don't know why that's written into the town's code or plan, or wherever that language is about reducing the impact fee for senior housing, unless it is because we want more senior housing in the town. And I can get behind that because they don't have a burden to the school systems.
No, I think it's more to look at, the impact fee is not to make someone pay more than the per capita numbers that's going to be averaged in that development. The purpose of the impact fee is to identify a fair number for what the impacts those new residential units are doing to the community, whether it's open space, whether it's rec facilities, whether it's all the facilities. So that's what the impact fee is to assess a fair number to the residential unit for the people moving into that development. So it's not meant to hinder anybody. It's just the town of Gorham, at the time the rec impact fee, identified a number of rec facilities as well as open space that they wanted to move forward and continue to ensure that the community had. And in order to do that, they established rec impact fees. As new developments move in, they pay their fair share. Does the rec impact fee pay the whole improvements for rec? No, they just help offset the cost for those facilities that the town is moving forward for.
And if I could, I think the one thing to note is that, again, it's simple math. So it's not, what we're looking at is a use type. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, because I think one of the questions that came up earlier is this a different use? Well, a 55 and over unit has a different use because the amount of occupants in that compared to a 3-bedroom, single family out in the country that's probably going to have more kids in it, and that's exactly what the formula is. The formula comes down, bedrooms equate to people, and all we're saying is our bedroom doesn't equate to the same bedroom as a single-family home with more people in it. So that's where we come up with the math from it. So we're just saying an age-restricted use, by definition, has less people per dwelling if it's 3 bedrooms or not.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I would just say from the town's, for the town, we should have a standard multiplier rate for this type of community. And whatever that is, I don't want to, I'm hesitant to change something tonight for a specific contract zone, and then that doesn't apply to every other, like we should come up with what the rate is and then apply it. And if the rate's not correct, then we should change it. And so right at this point, I'm not comfortable on deciding this tonight.
So I'm going to take the rec impact fee aside because that's a little bit different, and I can speak to that for a second. But so let's discuss the school because they're separate. So I think does the board have different comfort level on making a decision whether because of the contract zone they can't have kids, they're exempt from the school impact fee, or because of the stipulation regarding concerns, they got to pay the 10%. So I think the board can make that decision, and then I can speak to the other provision, and then having the town attorney can provide us a number. They're the ones who do the impact fees and help us assess that. I'm sure they could do some looking to give us a average for these type of developments per capita numbers that the planning board could then use to do this development, and then we would use to amend the impact fees language. So the board wants to move that way too.
Thank you. My historical knowledge of this, all right, the middle school impact fee was created 21 years ago when we were building the middle school, and that bond has been paid off. The council recently extended that middle school impact fee, so that will continue. The impact fees, in the early 2000s, we had a master plan that was done by PDT, the recreational department. The town was growing, and the recreational department had limited space, and it was intended to acquire land or have land set aside. So that's where these two fees have come about, and now here we are. My personal opinion, I like your idea. I don't want to push this off, but as Colonel said, I'm not comfortable either. I personally limit the middle school impact fees drastically to an over 55 or whatever the legal definition is. Keep in mind, these contract zones are written by perhaps attorneys that go to the council and say, here's this language, we want you to adopt it. They vote yay or nay, and then they send it to us. We recently had a contract zone that we've been discussing for a couple of weeks and try to tweak that language, and that language has to go back to the council, and they then have to say yes, exactly the way it is, or it comes back to us as we're playing tennis back and forth with the contract zone. So my middle school impact fee, my personal opinion, we should try to limit that as best we can, minimize it, my opinion. Recreational open space fee, Colonel, I think you said this, I think we all benefit from open space and recreational space, whether it's a track or something, but we need, I think all the seniors enjoy getting out and getting some fresh air when there's no snow on the road. I'd like to hear from everyone else, please, including staff. I'd like to, if we don't think we're going to be doing anything this evening, I'd like to give staff some direction.
Well, I think the middle school impact fee, I don't have any more direction for you. I think it's your discretion saying, planning board at the time and the council at the time adopted no kids. Is that enough to say, at this point, they don't pay the 10%, really it's 10%, I think it comes down to
$84.
$85 per unit. Is that something that you feel comfortable at this point waiving for the developer? I think if the board would like to act on that, I think we can do that tonight, and then we can go back to the attorney and have the number for you for the next meeting for consideration, and then identifying an impact fee.
Did you say they pay an 85 or 850?
85, 10% of $849 or $84.92.
Isn't 10% of $84.92 $849?
Yes, yeah.
So what am I missing?
We pay 10% of the $849.
84.9.
$84.92.
Okay.
Correct.
I guess personally for me, I'm okay. Years ago when I was serving another group, it is the responsibility of the Republic to support public education. Every generation has supported those young men and women behind us, and I believe, my opinion, personal opinion, is the responsibility of the Republic to do that. So I don't have any problem of having an application fee that would help cover that. Rec fee is a separate issue. That's my position on the impact fee, school impact fee. I'd like to hear from anyone else, please. Please, Ms. Nichols.
Well, I understand why it would make sense not to have an impact fee for a community that is expected not to have any children in it, that is prohibited from having 18 years and older. And that just makes sense to me. I do understand, however, that there's some murkiness in there of whether the town says and that I'm not really comfortable with, is if the town says you can't have anybody under, or the contract zone, anybody under 18, but they could have somebody under 18 and get us into a pickle. It feels to me like I'm not really ready to make that decision because of that. Like I'd want to know that we have that language clear. It's either they can't be there or they can be there, or there's some, or are you saying, Tom, that there is no way of making that?
Do I think it's likely to happen? No, I'm just saying what ifs. If there's a kid in there, we're not going to move them out. The association may take that route, but for the town of Gorham, just because of the legal opinion that we've got and then the fair housing requirements, no. Do I think there's some ambiguity that allows the planning board to grant the waiver or the reduction to the impact fee? Yes. I mean, I wasn't here when that impact fee was adopted. I know Mr. Georgitis, who's at the podium right now, could probably provide more guidance on it because the contract zone was drafted for him. So he may be able to provide the board with some more information regarding it.
We were hoping to avoid going down this rabbit hole. My name is Bob Georgitis. I previously was vice president of Kasperzak Homes Incorporated, Kasperzak Builders, Kasperzak Land Holdings. We started this process back in 2002 when we put the property under. And we worked with the town on a number of issues, extending this public sidewalks down Fort Hill Road, increasing the capacity of the sewer pump station at our cost, working with the MDOT to fix some site alignments. For the past our development up on Fort Hill Road, it's a development that has open space because of the nature of the condominiums and the way we developed the land. So back at walking trails, and the reason we chose this property for our development in the first place was because it abutted the 100-acre park of the town. So putting in walking paths and sidewalks, all those things, providing the town access across the private development land, providing parking for the public to park within the private development to access the town, was part of this whole negotiation back in the early stages of the development. When it came to the contract zone, the reason for the age restriction was something that we wanted as developers, because when we first looked at doing condominiums, we got it loud and clear. People didn't want to have a lot of homes and kids in the schools. And we said, fine, you know, we're happy to do condominiums. We took advantage of the HUD standards back then, which said they could be age 55 and over, with a restriction of no kids under age 18. That's back 20 years ago. That was part of the HUD law. Now they have modified that HUD law to take out that bit. But the HUD law still allows for discrimination, age discrimination, not for sex or race or all these other things, but allows for age discrimination legally. So we did this. It's not whatever the fair housing people do with HUD and the town chooses to do something, that doesn't change what the developer has to do, because it's a deed restriction, it's a deed covenant. And that's why when it came to these impact fees that were adopted after the fact, we said, this is an elderly age-restricted project with no kids. So 2 points. One, we're limited to the number of elderly people, age 55 and older. Yeah, there's some exceptions to that stuff, but we can prove by what Chip said, there's an average of 1.58 people, residents per unit. I worked for Kasperzak for the last 25 years. We did a lot of condo building. We built in Brunswick, we built in Topsom, we built in Kennebunk, we built in Wells. Did a Wells project that is equal to, bigger than Pheasant Knoll. We did a Kennebunk project that's equal to Pheasant Knoll. Both of those projects weren't age restricted, but the same sort of demographic still is in play. Less than 2 people per unit, because you're right, we're selling and designed this to sell to the aging baby boomers. We're downsizing. People grew up, had families, had large houses, but at our age, they're looking for the maintenance-free lifestyle of a condo. And the attraction marketing-wise is if you put the age restriction on it, then people think it's exclusive. The bottom line is there is no, should be very little impact recreation-wise, because we've given things to the town as a negotiated deal in the planning process 20 years ago, providing for the trail access across our property to allow the town, if they want to build another trail connecting the town village across our property to the town park. That's all in play. We just want to be fair. Chip is willing to pay half that, you know, half the impact fee on a per capita of what exists. I don't think we need to go down the rabbit hole of looking at all other kinds of developments, because this one's unique. This is a contract between the town and the developer, and it's been in play for 20 years. Whatever the town wants to do and change that contract, you can't do it without him agreeing, and he can't do it without David Walsh and all his neighbors that live in Pheasant Knoll, including our town planner, agreeing to those giveaways and getting rid of those restrictions. That has to be unanimous, or it's not going to happen. So they're going to be in play, regardless of what people may say. That's the history of where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Georgiadis. Where are we, folks? Thoughts?
Do you want to have the discussion on the school impact fee first? I mean, what's the sense of the board of?
I mentioned my school impact fee, my thoughts. I'd like to hear from anyone else if we want to just focus on that, and then we'll move on to the rec fees.
It's 10%, right? We're talking about 10%?
Yes, that's what they've been paying, 10%.
And how do we arrive at 10?
Because under that
It's in your bylaw.
it's in the.
It's in your bylaw.
Your bylaws.
No,
Yours.
in our contract zone language.
I don't have all
Yeah,
that.
so it's in the
Thank you.
contract zone language that requires age-restricted units to only pay 10% of that middle school impact fee.
So for me, on the middle school impact fee, I just think that good schools benefit the entire community, and 10% is reasonable. It brings everybody into the community. So for me, right now, I can be convinced otherwise, but right now, I'm comfortable with the 10%. I am also in support of changing or reducing the open space impact fee to reflect the lower usage. But again, I think that we should do that and have a standard and know what the standard is before we make that change. That's where I am.
Thank you. No
Okay.
pressure.
Yeah, I'll go next, David Burrows. Until Bill mentioned his reasoning for maintaining the impact fee for middle school, I thought it would make sense to waive that, but I also see it as being to the benefit of the school system, which doesn't necessarily eliminate the 55 and over population. I think, it helps the Gorham school system in general. So I don't think I would vote in favor of eliminating the impact fee for the middle school. As far as a recreation open space fee, I'd like to see what the town comes back with for more calculated approach to that.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Rock, paper, scissors over there.
Do the people living in Pleasant Knoll pay property taxes?
Yes.
So we all pay property taxes and pay our share of school fees for that?
These fees are paid for by the developer. When they walk into the office upstairs, they write out a check to the town of Gorham.
One time.
Right up front. These were mentioned, I respect you weren't here. Other developers have mentioned how much they will be paying upfront as they begin the process and they get their application fees upstairs. So these are strictly paid by the developer to the town of Gorham, irrespective of real estate fees, real estate taxes.
My opinion, my feeling is that it doesn't make sense to charge a school impact fee if their residents don't have children going to the school, and there's no anticipation because of the age restriction. So I would be in favor of eliminating that, but not the recreation fee.
Any opinion on the rec side?
No, I would leave, I think the rec side, I do think maybe if we come up with a better fit for that, I'm a little bit hesitant to go with one thing for one community right now, and then I don't know what that does to you guys in the planning office. If all of a sudden you're going to have everybody knocking on the door saying, but what about me and what about me? If we should wait until we come up with a system of evaluating that. That make sense?
Thank you. It does to me.
Yeah, I mean, when the town attorney, we should be able to provide that number that we would move forward with. So we would have that number next month for this project, and then when we move forward with the recommended amendment to the land use code, we could use that same number. So I don't foresee that taking long for us to provide for the planning board for next month.
Thank you. Mr. Delaney.
I'm not in favor of waiving, a 10% fee.
You want to maintain the 10%?
Yes.
Thank you. Any opinion on the rec fees?
I'd like more information and based on the staff feedback. So I think maybe that could be, we can table that one for the next meeting, perhaps.
Thank you. What I hear is I believe 4 of us are in favor of keeping the school impact fee at 10%. One opposed perhaps on that. This is not a formal vote. What I hear and understand is perhaps the rec fees go back to staff My concern about rec fees with this project is that any other project that is in a pipeline right now could be impacted, no pun intended. That I would hate for someone to say, hey, you just did this for this one. I don't want it to snowball.
Correct. We would come back with a per capita number for age-restricted dwelling units of 55 and older, and then another per capita number for age-restricted developments of 62 and older. So we would be closing the loophole for both of those to identify a per capita number. Now that would be across any development that would come forward under those requirements under HUD would get that new impact fee.
Okay. No chance that 55 and 62 are going to be the same number, so that we don't have to be worrying about percentages and all this?
I
mean, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
don't know. I lean to whoever is going to do the research for us, but I would have them do both. If they come back with the same number, then we just advise the planning board that the number's the same.
Sure.
I don't. Do you ask the developer? Has he done 62 and older? And if he no,
I am not.
Not yet.
So I'm a little bit older than Chip, so I've done a number of these things. The reason for we chose the 55 and older was if it's 62 and older, everybody has to be 62 and older. The 55 and older, only one of the persons in the household has to be 55 to be able to buy. But the restriction back in the day was it didn't allow for kids. And our biggest concern here in Gorham was that parents of USM kids would buy our condos and put college-age kids in there and destroy what we were trying to build as a community. So we were the ones. The town never asked for this. This is what we did, and between our attorney and the town's attorney worked out that language. Just as an aside, we in the original draft of the contract zone had asked to avoid having any future impact fees. But that was withdrawn and taken out of in the negotiations with the council. We took that off the plate. We said, okay, we'll do that. We'll pay the impact fees if the town adopts them. Now, the real question is, what's an elderly person? That's not defined. And I think to make it easier for staff, that don't bother to figure out difference between 55 and 62. We're all old. The big key is, in this development alone, you want to talk about finances. I did a little spreadsheet based on the sales that have been done since we started building in 2005. The average tax revenue, and I multiplied that for a full build out. The impacts to the town is, this development is generating over $1 million in revenues. Private streets, no kids in your schools. What town services are they using other than recreation? So, okay.
Thank you. So we would perhaps entertain a motion if someone wants to do some wordsmithing. Perhaps we'll take the middle school impact fee first. That's your pleasure. I can't make these motions. I have to look to the.
I don't have the motion.
I don't have a motion.
Yes.
So we need to wordsmith and say perhaps.
Well, if we don't do anything, it stays as it is, right?
We still have to vote?
If you don't do anything, it stays as it is. That's true. They'd be paying what they have been paying all along,
The 10%.
the 10%.
I'm like a fish out of water. Are you saying if we don't do anything, it's a moot point and it just continues status quo?
Yes.
And we're on camera. Okay.
Well, they've been paying two different fees right along.
Well, we have two different motions here proposed, so
True.
we won't consider anything on the middle school impact fee.
Question for the chairman. Shouldn't it still be a vote because some people may want to express their... There you go.
I believe so. I believe there's got to be some kind of
Well, somebody has to make a motion then.
wordsmithing the language.
And if So,
Let's make, I will make a motion then.
Thank you.
We'll see how it goes. I vote for the middle school facilities impact fee. I move that future permitted dwelling unit construction in Pheasant Knoll be exempt from the middle school facilities impact fee based on the finding that the contract zone agreement does not allow school-age persons specifically stated in the following, quote, "No persons of 18 years of age or younger shall be permitted as a permanent resident," end quote.
Point of clarification, by saying that Pheasant Knoll be exempt from middle school impact fees, I thought I heard we were in favor of keeping it just the way it is.
Yes, but this way we vote against this motion.
Yeah, you always keep it in the positive. The motion's always in the positive.
Thank you. Someone like to second that, please?
I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I think we've discussed it.
Barbara Nichols, I should say.
I'm sorry?
I should say my name for the record.
No, I thought I did. We belabored this. Are we ready? We've had discussion. All those in favor of the motion?
Which is to keep it the way it is.
no.
No.
We want to defeat, my opinion is Mr. Burrows, you want to defeat
Sure.
this.
The motion is to make it exempt from the impact fee so that they will not have to pay the impact fee. That's the motion.
I'm going to vote.
That's correct. Ms. Nichols is in yay. All those opposed? 4. Thank you for that. Now we have recreational and open space impact fees. I believe I heard the majority, we want to send this back to staff. Let them work through it, get some magic numbers.
Yeah, we could have a we'll have a number after conducting some research that we'll provide at the next meeting. It could be similar to the number provided tonight, but we'll just do some research and provide that number.
Should we table this then to the next meeting? Is that the appropriate motion?
Yes, if you want to see that number.
True.
Colonel?
I move that for future proceeding dwellings on unit construction, that the recreational open space impact fee number be considered by the staff and returned to us at the next meeting. So the motion is to table this discussion until
The rec impact fees.
yes, for the recreational and open space impact fees to table the discussion until a future meeting.
Is there a second, please?
I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. We're all understanding that we want more information. We're stuck in between.
A lot of information, yes.
A lot of information, yes, thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Are you okay?
Yes, thank you.
Someone wake up Mr. Walsh, please, and ask him to rejoin us. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least is item 8 on our agenda. Discussion site plan, Gen X Capital Partners, Limited Liability Corporation, Luxury Motor Toys, request for site plan approval from 40 condominium garage units with associated OCI, map 34, lot 3003, represented by John Whitten, Jr., PE with Haley Ward. Staff, would you like to kick this off?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is the third time this has been before you. Proposing an amendment to a previously approved plan, or actually several previously approved plans. They've started from scratch, essentially, with a brand-new site plan. So this is the third time the board has seen it. The outstanding items for your consideration is a waiver request for no sidewalks to the development. There are sidewalks within the development, but there's no sidewalks on Old Canal Way, and there's no sidewalks to Old Canal Way along Mosier Road. So that's a request for you to decide on this evening. And yes, no, the parking waiver request you can ignore because they have enough parking there. And then there's outstanding peer review comments, mostly having to do with stormwater and some tweaks to the plan that are still necessary. And with that, I turn that over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Ironman. Mr. Witten?
Yes, sir. Thank you. John Witten Jr. With Haley Ward, civil engineer. The applicant is not with us tonight directly, but he has been here for the last 2 presentations. Our last presentation here was a public hearing, which was closed, and we got reasonably close to approval, but there were a few outstanding items, so we got tabled to this evening. There have been some slight modifications to the layout from that last meeting. Basically, we just condensed the units all together. We provided no breaks between buildings, and we added a utility corridor per each grouping of buildings to allow for ease of construction and serviceability of each grouping with a sprinkler system head and water meter abilities. So that's really the only changes, substantive changes. We did add paved access walkways behind each unit for emergency access. There'll be a front access to each building and a rear access, man door at the back of each unit. And so there is a paved walkway at the rear of each unit. And we have added a few parking spaces to meet the general ordinance requirement of the 42 spaces rather than asking for a waiver. We submitted responses to each of the review comments from the previous review. We did get some additional very minor engineering comments on Thursday afternoon, just the other day. So we feel that those are very easy to meet. Most of it was just a couple missing labels and a 0.1 foot difference in an invert to change. So we feel that there's going to be no layout or dramatic plan changes from our response to peer review comments. And we did supply a request for a waiver for the sidewalks, as we discussed at the last meeting. So I believe we are pretty much set for, I believe, approvals, and would respectfully ask that we at least be considered for approval tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Witten. Any questions for Mr. Witten?
I do have one question, yes.
Please.
You mentioned the paved walkways around the building?
Yes.
How big are they going to be?
They're 5 feet in width.
Okay. So they're going to be plowed with a little tractor?
Yeah, or snow blower or something. Yeah, they do have to maintain walkability at all times, just due to life safety access. Yep. We did arrive at 5 feet because we thought there might be some mechanical units at the back, the heat exchangers possibly. So we wanted to have those wide enough so that that can be against the building and still have 3 feet of access all the way around. So.
Mr. Chairman, question?
Yes, please.
I know there was quite a bit of discussion about the parking, and I was kind of actually surprised that you weren't asking for a waiver. In reality, when you look at where your parking spaces are to the units, I mean, isn't it realistic? I mean, an owner's got to come in and park in front of the unit, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So why didn't you ask for the waiver on the parking?
Because we had more than enough pavement to put the stripes on there, and would rather the record be a little cleaner without, one more waiver request was really the crutch of it.
Sure, and if you look at it from an environmental standpoint, you have more pavement, more stormwater, So anytime you can reduce pavement is or can be a plus, especially if it's not going to be well utilized. And that leads me into my next question. is, all right, now you have these parking spaces, probably won't be highly utilized just for the nature of the development. Are owners could be allowed to store additional vehicles out in those parking spaces?
No, there's no proposal for outdoor storage. All the storage would be in the garage units. And in fact, the applicant doesn't want to necessarily encourage parking in front of the garage doors of each unit because that may limit the maneuverability of the opposite unit. So if somebody's trying to back a boat in, they'll probably need that full 45 feet to be convenient, and if somebody's parked in front of their unit, that may cause,
All right, so that's
hopefully everybody's neighborly and they can talk it out, right?
That's condo bylaws then.
No, but, if we're not striping that out, then it doesn't necessarily encourage the parking.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else for Mr. Whitten? The board, comments, questions of staff? I have my hand raised. If you don't mind, please, page 16 of 22. Similar to previous questions, presentations, we have some yellow here.
Yes.
The grading of the vehicular, that has not been resolved, or
Something they need to tweak.
something, Mr. Norton, is this your bailiwick that you'll?
These are not my comments.
No, I meant, will you be the one to verify the grade elevation?
Sorry, my.
Yeah.
Yes, this is certainly something I will
Okay,
review.
thank you. Again, to you, maybe the sidewalk issue, is that, do we need access from Old Canal Way to the?
I'll leave that one up to Carol.
This isn't necessarily this sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's an industrial park in the middle of nowhere, and it's got some things in it that you wouldn't necessarily walk to, and there are no homes allowed in it anyway, so people aren't going to be walking across the street or down the street necessarily to these.
The nearest sidewalk is in Gateway Commons.
Miles away.
Yeah, about a mile and a half.
Is this highlighted perhaps to emphasize maybe reviewing a waiver?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That is all I had. I have looked at everything else and thought everything else was in order. I'd like to hear from anyone else, please.
We've seen this several times. I'm ready to support.
As I.
Agreed. There was one request for a waiver, if we would like to review that in advance.
I'm comfortable with the staff.
We have to vote on the waiver.
Yeah, we do.
Or a motion?
Waiver separately.
On page 2 of 22, there is a waiver that's requested.
Karen?
Please.
All right. It's David Walsh. I move to grant the waiver to Gen X Partners, LLC, from a requirement to provide pedestrian access to a development site located at map 34, lot 3-3, found in the Land Use Development Code, Chapter 2, Section 2.5F11.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. I think we heard from staff that this is kind of an isolated place. Maybe we don't want all kinds of people, pedestrians, et cetera, et cetera. I personally support that. I will vote for this waiver. I'd like to hear from others. Mr. Walsh, you okay?
Yep.
Thumbs up. I support it as
Everyone
well.
know? Everyone?
David Burrows, I will also.
Thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Waiver is granted. And next we have perhaps a motion on the project on page 22, if you have the copy.
Chair, I will move to grant Gen X Partners LLC request for site plan approval for 65 Old Canal Way located on map 34, lot 33 on the Old Canal Industrial Zoning District based on findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
David Burrows, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. I'd like to hear from everyone. I am in approval. I'm wondering if we did want to send it to consent or we want to wait. Just an opinion, just a question.
I'm ready to approve.
Yeah. I guess that would be hear from staff on that question, because I'm ready to approve.
What is the better way to expedite this? I'm sorry, on page 22, where we have two motions. The site plan approval has been motion and seconded. We're discussing that now, and I was just asking if consent agreement is a more expeditious way to move this along.
If you chose to approve it, one of your conditions of approval always is, it's a standing condition, that they comply with all the peer review comments and staff comments. So what will happen, you've granted the waiver, so that's approved the sidewalk situation for going to. Now what will happen is they'll submit a new plan that revises and doctors it up to comply with everything in terms of the stormwater comments that were provided by the peer review engineers.
Okay.
And staff will shepherd that along through and get it to exactly where it should be in terms of ordinance language, so that it approves with it. Complies with the ordinance. I'm sorry. Not until then will we allow you to sign the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. It does for me. It does for me. I'm going to vote to approve. I'd like to hear from anyone else. Anyone have other thoughts? All those in favor, please. Anyone opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, I don't believe there is any other business to come before us. We have some additional workshops in the queue you're working on. Mr. Poirier's got some things he's got to get some
Oh, definitely.
accounting numbers. I don't want him to have any idle time. We have some drawings to sign for those of us that have been attending to the other meetings. Business.
Motion to adjourn.
I second. David Burrows.
All those in favor? I don't think we need to discuss. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. And thank you, Ben Dyke, for videotaping us this evening. Thank you.